Organizing values into strong, connected shapes does 3 huge things for your drawings. It will improve the readability of your drawings, allowing the viewer to understand it in one glance. It'll add depth because well-organized values build a convincing hierarchy of planes. And because you have control of where the eye goes, every accent, texture, highlight feels deliberate instead of random, and your drawing will command attention from across the room. We're gonna draw this cast of a sculpture by Baroque artist Francois Duquesnoy. The main goal here is to practice unifying your values by grouping them into larger, connected shapes. Instead of seeing every subtle shift in value as a separate thing, we want to think like designers, consciously finding connections between values to create a more cohesive and powerful image. I find it really helpful to think of value groups as oceans, lakes, and rivers. We have these large areas of light or shadow, and these are our oceans. Within a large area of light or shadow, you might have a medium-sized shape from the other family. These are lakes. These lakes can be connected by other shapes. These are like rivers. Shadow lakes can be connected to shadow oceans with rivers of halftone. This reduces their presence and increases the sense of unity. It's especially useful to think about these as rivers because we want to consider the way they flow, the direction they move, the gesture that they create in our composition. Balancing 2D composition and 3D form. Don't just passively copy the shapes that you see. Think about how these shapes enhance the 2-dimensional arrangement and carve out the 3-dimensional forms. There's a delicate dance between the two. First, 2D composition. Values, their shape, size, and location, play a big role in the overall composition and the way the eye flows through the drawing. And second, 3D form. Values reveal the planes. So a change of value suggests a change in plane. Every shape I design, I consider how that shape affects both of these things. Sometimes the major plane changes help to unify the smaller shapes, creating a better 2D composition. Think simple primitives like big planes on the forehead, jaw, or a cylinder version of the hair and beard. These small forms feel cluttered. If you let the cylinder's major plane changes influence the values of the small shapes, now they feel like they're working together. Dealing with floaters. When we're designing our composition, we want to be aware of how much each shape stands out based on its value contrast with the surrounding shapes. A common rule of thumb is to avoid floaters, unless they are intended to draw attention. Some artists strive to capture the reference as it is, and that's fine. But I encourage you to modify and design to improve on the reference. Have an opinion. Add your own taste, your own take on reality. There will be parts of your reference that are already beautifully connected, unified, and create shapes of common gesture. Notice those and capture them. And this is even more true when you're working from a photo of a sculpture that has already been designed by an amazing artist. But when the reference has a floating shape, a lake, that you think is too distracting or doesn't fit with the design of your value structure, there are several ways to deal with it. You can merge it with the ocean, modify the shape to actually make it part of the ocean. That only works if the lake is near the ocean. But if it's too far away, you can add connecting rivers. For example, add halftone rivers to connect a floating shadow lake to the ocean or nearby lakes. Even in the reference, notice how they're naturally connected by dark halftones that carry them beautifully to the ocean of shadow. That's something Mr. Francois did intentionally. Halftones aren't dark enough to be part of the shadow family, but they are dark enough to create a visual bridge. You can also change the value of a lake to make it closer to the surrounding values. Like I mentioned earlier, you can consider the planes of the major 3D form and bring the smaller lakes closer to the values of those planes. You can also change the shape to flow with the gesture. These floating shadows work just fine because they reinforce the S-curve gesture of the hair. Or you could just leave it as an eye-catching shape if for some reason you like that shape to stand out. It's not so bad that this shadow under the brow ridge is floating on its own. We want to bring focus to the eyes. And this very light shape on the top of the nose stands out quite a bit since it's surrounded by shadows and dark halftones. But that's okay, because again, it brings our attention to the eyes. So, I got an assignment for you guys. I've provided you with several photos of this beautiful cast. A huge benefit of working from casts is that you're not dealing with varying local values. The hair isn't darker than the skin, and you don't have rosy cheeks and red lips making the halftones look darker in those areas. All the values you see are there because of the light on form. And that's kind of nice when you're learning about light on form. Your assignment is to pick one of the photos and create a careful study using 5 values, 2 in the shadows and 3 in the lights. You can use the value tool on proko.com/values to help you get an initial read of the rough value distributions. And while you're on Proko, check out the full basics course at proko.com/drawing. You'll get all the premium projects and demos to help you improve faster. And for the next 2 weeks, you can get it for 20% off. So go get it. You can also do some thumbnails to figure out your composition. And then move on to the larger drawing, applying everything you just learned about designing value groups. Do this as a full page drawing. Don't make it too small or you're gonna really struggle controlling the values of your lakes and rivers. Start with a linear lay-in and use what you learned in the measuring proportions and eyeballing proportions projects. Then clearly separate your shadow from the light family, just like we did with the spheres, before moving on to building up all the other values that you see. Make sure you squint often. It's the simplest way to see the connections and identify those big floaters. Flipping your drawing upside down or looking in the mirror can also help with this. Now, regarding edges, I know for many of you, including myself, it's gonna be really hard not to work on all the intricate soft edges that we see in the sculpture. But without much knowledge of how to control these edges, if you focus on those transitions, you might be sacrificing the design of your values. You can work on some edges, that's fine. But if you find yourself getting distracted and you start stumbling, I want you to fall back on the sharp edged tiles. Ignore the transitions and focus completely on the value shapes. Once you're done, head over to proko.com, find this lesson, and post your drawing in the community. Advanced students, I'm giving you some extra values to play with. I want you to stay between 7 and unlimited. These extra values will allow you to introduce more subtlety and more sophisticated transitions between your shapes. Sometimes 5 is just not enough to get the level of finesse that you want. You might have a core shadow that gets darker as it travels down a form, or in a single shadow shape, you have a core shadow, reflected light, and occlusion shadow, each having distinct values. So you'll need 3 or maybe even 4 values just in the shadows. And same thing in the lights. You might have a highlight value, and you want more than just 2 halftone values to model the intricate plane changes of the forms in light. 7 or more values allows you to create a more realistic illusion of form. Also, feel free to be more interpretive in how you group values and change things to create a compelling and well-designed image. Basically, be bold enough to trust your gut on your own design decisions. All right, everybody, good luck. Remember, the main objective here is to practice thinking of values as interconnected shapes and be intentional about how these shapes work together. A single thoughtful accent is louder than a bunch of accidental ones. If you want to watch me do this project, there's a 2-hour narrated demonstration in my Drawing Basics course. Go ahead and try the project, but if you run into any issues, watching me do it and then watching me critique real students will be extremely helpful to you. That's over at proko.com/drawing.